and welcome back to the Attitude Adjustment Study Series. We've been going through and we've been taking a look at the blessed statements of Jesus, those that are found there in Matthew chapter 5. These are what we call the Beatitudes, or those attitudes and characteristics of Jesus that we should be. Just to recap real quick, throughout this series we've been talking about our instructions to be humble, to be repentant, to be righteous, to be teachable, to be merciful, to be pure, to be peacemakers. And in this final study of this series, we're going to talk about our necessity that we are found to be faithful. Now, because this study will take us into a few more verses than normal, let's go ahead and let's dive right in, shall we? In Matthew chapter 5, verse 10, Jesus, he says this, "Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Now, you might remember from our study on righteousness that this simply means doing the right things. So, right away, we hear Jesus telling us, blessed or happy are you when you are persecuted for doing the right thing. Crazy thought. And this first word that we look at, well, the one that really jumps off the page and we're able to see and kind of makes us pause is that word persecuted. You might say, whoa, wait a minute. I don't want to be persecuted, especially just for doing the right things. Well, first of all, let me say, I hear you. But take a look with me at another passage. Let's take a look at John chapter 15, verses 18 through 25, which records Jesus saying this, "If the world hates you, ye know that it hated me before it hated you. If ye were of the world would love his own. But because ye are not of the world, but I have chosen you out of the world, therefore the world hateth you. Remember the word that I said unto you, the servant is not greater than his Lord. If they have persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they have kept my saying, they will also keep yours also. But all these things will they do unto you for my name's sake, because they know not him that sent me. If I had not come and spoken unto them, they had not sinned. But now they have no cloak for their sin. He that hateth me, hateth my Father also. If I had not done among them the works which none other man did, they had not had sin. But now have they both seen and hated both me and my Father. But this cometh to pass, that the word might be fulfilled, that what is written in their law, they hated me without a cause." And when we read this, we say, wow! Because even in the cruelty of it, just the picture of how that we get to share in Jesus' persecution is one of the coolest things, I think, that we get to be offered as Christians. Our lives, they should always reflect Christ. And this simply says that if our lives do reflect Christ, then we too are going to face persecution. So, the first question that I have today is this. What are you pursuing right now that can lead you to being persecuted like Jesus? What right things are you doing that get you into trouble with this world? You see, it's really just that simple. And if your answer is nothing, well, then truthfully, you have some work to do. You have some attitudes that need to be adjusted. Because Jesus doesn't tell us that you might be persecuted for looking like him. Jesus says you will be persecuted for choosing to have an attitude like him. That's the way it is. But rather than be fearful and worried or avoiding this persecution, we should, in reality, be running toward it if receiving the kingdom of heaven is our goal. If we really want to be faithful, then persecution is a part of the job. Persecution is something that we should eagerly be embracing. So take a look with me now at Matthew chapter 5, verses 11 and 12. Here, Jesus continues by saying, "Blessed are ye when men shall revile you and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so persecuted they the prophets which were before you." Now, Jesus first gives us the blessing in verse 11. But then, just as we've seen with all of the other statements, he immediately follows it up in verse 12 with the promise. Now, let me ask, have you ever been insulted for following Jesus? Has anyone ever spoken evil of you or poorly of you for your beliefs? If your answer is yes, well, then be happy. That's what it tells us here. You know, the early Christians, those people that walked with Jesus and they heard his teachings, those that partook with him in communion, they watched as he hung on a cross for their sins and then witnessed his return to heaven. Those Christians, they quickly came to understand what Jesus was saying in this beatitude. Those early Christians, they received real persecution for following Jesus. Not the kind of persecution that we Americans seem to believe that we've somehow experienced, but real persecution. Those early followers of Jesus, they knew what it meant to really be insulted, really be reviled. They felt what it was like to be truly hated for simply trusting in Jesus. Now let me ask, have you ever been imprisoned, beaten up, or tortured for your decision to follow the Lord? Now your answer is probably no. But what if you were? Would you still choose to follow him? Still today, in places all around this world, Christians are still experiencing this exact type of thing. Yet, they are still hungry for him. Yet, they still choose to follow him. Would you? Would you still be faithful to him? These are the questions that we should answer. As a matter of fact, these are the questions that Jesus says we must answer. You see, this decision to remain committed to Christ is one that we all must make every single day. Now, it can sometimes be a tough choice for us to make, but it's one that we must make in order for us to receive these promises. The promises that we can be children of God. The promises that we can inherit the kingdom of heaven. The promises that we can be blessed. The promises that we can be truly happy. You see, we can have all of these things, just like those early Christians, if we choose to be faithful to God in all things. These are the Beatitudes. These are the attitudes that we should be. And, well, just like that be that we first began with in this series, we need to have faithful attitudes of work. We need to be faithful to serving our community. We need to be faithful to serving our King, just as the bees serve their queen. All of these be attitudes we have covered in this series are qualities and characteristics that Jesus himself has required of us. Take these blessed attitudes and make them your attitudes. If you find yourself falling short, well, I pray that you can begin making adjustments today. Now, I've really enjoyed this time that we've had together. But all good things, they must come to an end. So I'll end this way. Be happy. And one final thing, be blessed.